Do Christians really believe in the Bible? To answer that question, we first need to define what it means to be a Christian. Although there are many different denominations associated with the Christian religion, the core belief of all the denominations is they profess belief in the teaching of Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of the Most High, that redeemed them from eternal damnation by his sacrificial death. The next question we'll ask to help us better answer this question is, what does it mean to believe in something? To believe means to accept something as true, genuine, or real. Therefore, to believe in the Bible, which is the living word of the Most High, you are simply agreeing with what the Bible says, and you are willing to order the steps of your life accordingly. Now, on the flip side, those who do not believe in the Bible don't do or pattern their lives after what the Bible says. That's simple enough. Okay, now that we have laid the foundation for our discussion, let's look and see what the Bible says, and then we can determine if Christians really believe in the Bible or not. In Exodus 20, verses 3 through 5, the first and second commandments state, "Have no other Elohim before me. You shall not make any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in the heavens above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down yourself to them, nor serve them. For I, Yahuwah Elohiah, am a jealous El, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me." In Deuteronomy 4, verses 14 through 19, the word of the Most High also states, "And Yahuwah commanded me at the time to teach you statutes and judgments, that you might do them in the land whither you go over to possess it. Take ye therefore good heed unto yourselves, for you saw no manner of similitude on the day that Yahuwah spake unto you in Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest you corrupt yourselves and make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness of male or female. And lest thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun, and the moon, and the stars, even all the host of heaven, shouldest be driven to worship them, and serve them, which Yahuwah Elohakah hath divided unto all nations under the whole heaven." Now Christians will say, no, we don't worship any graven images or idols, and we definitely don't worship the sun, moon, and the stars. Really? Really? Well, let's investigate that. But before we do, we must take note of a few more scriptures. Revelations 12, 9 through 10 states, "And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil, and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him." 1 John 5:19 states, "We know that we are children of the Most High, and that the world around us is under the control of the evil one." You see, the Bible tells us explicitly that Satan will deceive the whole world. This means that everyone on this earth during their lifetime at some point or another will be under Satan's deception. Unfortunately, it's only the chosen few who will be awakened to the truth and delivered from his lies. This is why it states in Matthew 7:13, "To enter the kingdom you must go through the narrow gate, because wide is the gate and broad is the way to destruction, and many go that way. But narrow is the gate, and difficult is the road to eternal life, and very few find it." This fact is further stated in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 7 through 12, which states, "For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let, until he be taken out of the way. And then shall the Torahless one be revealed, whom Adonai Yahusha shall consume with the ruach of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause Yah shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness." So again, we see that Satan has deceived the whole world. But the problem is many people don't even realize that they are under his deception. Well, one might ask, how was Satan able to deceive everyone? And that answer can be found in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 13 through 15, which states, "For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Hamashiach. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. So one may ask, how does Satan deceive? And the answer is by masquerading as an angel of light. You see, Satan is a pretender who portrays himself as this great illuminator or teacher sent to lead men out of darkness by exposing them to the secret knowledge reserved only for the angelic realm. This is how he deceived Eve and ultimately Adam, by getting them to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which they were commanded not to do in hopes to become like the Most High. But little did they know they were already like the Most High, because they were sinless, but due to their folly and giving ear to the enemy, they were banished from paradise. Satan uses these same tricks of deception today because he understands that people will not receive him in his true form, because he is evil and hideous. Therefore, he has to put on a costume and make himself more appealing so that you will receive him and his lies. You see, Satan is not a creator or even an originator like the Most High. He is only a counterfeit. He can only take what the Most High has already created and alter it or change it into something different and pawn it off as the original. This is one of his greatest tricks that he uses to lead people into false doctrine and the worship of the creation instead of the creator. To give an illustration, there was a movie that came out in 1988 called Coming to America, starring Eddie Murphy. In the movie, there was a man named Cleo McDowell, played by the late great actor John Amos, who owned a restaurant called McDowell's. His fast food restaurant was a complete counterfeit of McDonald's. There is even a scene in the movie where one of his employees caught him reading the McDonald's manual that he had been using to mimic their recipes. In another scene, he is training two new employees, and he begins to compare his restaurant with McDonald's by telling them, they're McDonald's. I'm McDowell's. They have the golden arches. I have the golden arcs. They got the Big Mac. I have the Big Mick. They have the sesame seed bun. My buns don't have sesame seeds on them. You can see that everything McDonald's had, he pretty much replicated and just changed the name. Satan is the same way. He reads the Bible and counterfeits the stories and the characters and presents his version to people as religion or mythology. Then he couples his doctrines with rituals and practices that the people perform, believing that they are serving and worshiping the Most High, but in reality, they are actually serving and worshiping Satan. Take, for example, the story of Noah. Noah was a primordial. The term primordial just means existing at or from the beginning of time. Primordials were the first people that the Most High created, and they had the longest lifespans. The oldest was Methuselah, who lived to be 969 years old. Noah was Methuselah's grandson and lived to be 950 years old. Noah's sons were not primordial, meaning they were not from the beginning like he was, and their lifespans were much shorter. They only lived to be between 400 and 600 years old. The primordial time period before the flood was considered the old world, and the time period after the flood was considered the new world. Noah was the only primordial who survived the flood to see the new world. So in a sense, he surpassed time by living in two different time periods. As the story goes, after the flood, Noah was betrayed and dishonored by his youngest son, Kim, or better known as Ham, which resulted in Noah pronouncing a curse on Ham's youngest son, Canaan. Now, Satan has taken the story of Noah and his sons and counterfeited it. This is where you get the term Uranus and Chronos, aka Father Time, because again, Noah's life spanned from the old time period before the flood to the new time period after the flood. In Greek mythology, Uranus, who was a depiction of Noah, was the sky god. And like Noah, who preserved life on earth by building the ark, Uranus was responsible for the creation of life on earth. Like the story of dishonor that Noah experienced from his son Ham, Uranus' son Chronos dishonored his father Uranus by castrating him, and in doing so, he took his power and became the father of time. In Roman mythology, this same false deity of Father Time is represented by the Roman god Janus, who is depicted as the god of beginnings, endings, transitions, time, duality, and doorways. This is why when you see an image of Janus, you typically see a person with two faces pointing in opposite directions. One face is a depiction of an old man with a beard looking to the past, and the other face is a young man looking to the future. The month of January is named after the pagan god Janus, aka the god of doorways. Okay, please bear with me because we are just starting to heat up. Now, Ham was wicked, and so were his sons. The backdrop of their story is further detailed in the book of Jasher. Although the book of Jasher is not part of the canon, it's still viewed as a credible biblical source because it was mentioned in Joshua chapter 10, verse 13, and 2 Samuel chapter 1, verse 18. In the book of Jasher, it states that Ham snuck into Noah's tent and stole the garment that the Most High had made for Adam, which had empowered Adam to rule. Sometime later, Ham gave the garment to his son Cush, and many years after that, Cush gave the garment to his son Nimrod, who at the age of 20 put on the garment and became empowered as Adam had been to rule the earth. Over time, Nimrod began to rebel against the Most High by leading the people to build the Tower of Babel, which the Most High destroyed as stated in the book of Genesis chapters 10 through 11. Due to the power that Nimrod displayed, he was worshipped as a god, and so was his wife, whose name was Semiramis. Now, this is where Satan's mythology steps back in. Nimrod lived for many more years after the destruction of the Tower of Babel and the scattering of the people. However, after his death, his wife Semiramis kept his legend alive by telling people that he had been reborn and took on the form of the sun, thus becoming the sun god. This is when the worship of the sun began. Sometime later, after the death of Nimrod, Semiramis became pregnant and told everyone that Nimrod had impregnated her by the rays of the sun. Once the child was born, she named him Tammuz and told everyone that he was Nimrod reincarnated. This, of course, led the people to worship Tammuz as the sun god in the flesh, making Semiramis the mother of God, aka the mother goddess. However, legend states that Tammuz was not a mighty warrior like Nimrod, and one day he was attacked and killed by a wild boar at the age of 40 on a hunting expedition. Now I know what you're thinking. This is absolutely ridiculous and too difficult to believe. However, Satan is crafty and highly sophisticated in his deceptions. Not only did he have the heathen nations believing these lies and worshiping these false deities, but he also had the children of Yasharal worshiping them as well. Proof of this is found in Ezekiel chapter 8, verses 12 through 18, which says, Then Yahuwah said to me, Son of man, have you seen what the leaders of Yasharal are doing with their idols in dark rooms? They are saying Yahuwah doesn't see us. He has deserted our land. Then Yahuwah added, Come, and I will show you even more detestable sins than these. He brought me to the north gate of Yahuwah's temple, and some women were sitting there weeping for Tammuz. Have you seen this? He asked. But I will show you even more detestable sins than these. Then he brought me into the inner court of Yahuwah's temple. At the entrance to the sanctuary between the entry room and the bronze altar, there were about 25 men with their backs to the sanctuary of Yahuwah. They were facing east, bowing low to the ground, worshiping the sun. Have you seen this, Son of Man? He asked. Is it nothing to the people of Judah that they commit these detestable sins, leading the whole nation into violence, thumbing their noses at me, provoking my anger? Therefore I will respond in fury. I will neither pity nor spare them, and though they cry for mercy, I will not listen. Now, I read the scripture to prove that despite how outlandish the lies are that Satan concocts, that the people of the world still believed in his lies and worshiped Tammuz and the sun god, aka Nimrod, including the Most High's chosen people. This should serve as a warning that no one is beyond Satan's influence. No one. Okay, now back to Satan's mythology. After Tammuz's death, and there are different variations of the story, by the way, but one version states that Semiramis told everyone that when Tammuz was attacked by the wild boar, his blood spilled on a dead tree stump, and once the rays from the sun shined on the blood, it brought the tree stump back to life, and an evergreen tree began to grow, symbolizing the rebirth of Tammuz. Over time, the evergreen continued to grow, and every year on December 25th, which they say is the birth date of Tammuz, aka the sun god, the people would decorate the tree and leave gifts under it in honor of Tammuz, which is the origin of Christmas and the Christmas tree. Hold up, that's not all. When Tammuz died, the people mourned for him for 40 days, and every year on the anniversary of his death, the people would not eat meat for 40 days, with each day representing the number of years that he lived, because Tammuz supposedly died when he was 40 years old. After the 40-day fast, which is the origin of Lent, a celebration would occur where everyone would exchange colored eggs and eat them, symbolizing the resurrection of Tammuz because eggs were symbolic of rebirth. This is one of the origins of Easter. It has also been stated that these eggs were colored by dipping them in the blood of children who had been sacrificed on the altar to Tammuz. The people also began to worship Tammuz as the male Babylonian god of spring and fertility because of the belief that his blood caused the evergreen to sprout from the dead tree stump. So, in addition to Tammuz being the sun god reborn, he also became known as the Green Man. And the people would make small green idols of him to pray to, believing that this would result in an abundant harvest. In the fall, when the vegetation died, the people would weep because they believed that it symbolized Tammuz's death as well as his descension into the underworld. However, they would rejoice in the spring when the vegetation returned because they believed that it symbolized Tammuz's resurrection. They would also celebrate his resurrection by eating ham, symbolizing the slaying of the wild boar that killed Tammuz, which is the origin of the Easter ham. Lastly, they would bake cakes shaped like the letter T to remind everyone to honor the life of Tammuz, the sun god. This looks like well, we'll get into that later. Now, Semiramis was able to manipulate and influence the people as she did because she was deeply rooted in the occult and demonic worship. The people not only worshiped Tammuz, but they also worshiped Semiramis as well, due to her claim of the Immaculate Conception and the birth of her son Tammuz by way of the sun, which is Satan's way of mocking the birth of the true son of Yahuwah. Thus she took on the title Goddess of Fertility, and many women, especially barren women, would pray to her to conceive a child. The rabbit was also used as a symbol of fertility because of their prolific ability to procreate, which is the origin of the Easter bunny. Upon the death of Semiramis, she was later said to have transitioned to the moon and became the moon goddess, aka Queen of Heaven, thereby resulting in the worship of Nimrod, Tammuz, and Semiramis as the sun and moon gods. The practice of worshiping Semiramis is also illustrated in Jeremiah chapter 7, verses 10 through 18, which states, "And come and stand before me in this house, which is called by my name, and say, We are delivered to do all these abominations. Is this house, which is called by my name, become a den of robbers in your eyes? Behold, even I have seen it, saith Yahuwah. Seest thou not what they do in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem? The children gather wood, and the fathers kindle fire, and the women knead their dough to make cakes to the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto other Elohim, that they may provoke me to anger." Now let's see how Satan deceives the whole world. When the people were initially scattered after the destruction of the Tower of Babel, they took their occult practices with them that they learned in ancient Babylon. This is why the worship of Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz have been adopted by every civilization in history since their conception. Although their names have been changed and the mythological stories slightly differ from nation to nation, the overall storyline remains the same in that you have a triune pagan deity that results in the worship of the sun, moon, and stars. Unbeknownst to many people, these same pagan deities are still venerated today, but are hidden by well-designed signs and symbols. They also continue to be worshipped in just about every major religion today, but again, their names are constantly changed to conceal their true identities. This table is just a summary of the different names of these three pagan deities in the ancient cities. For instance, in Egypt, the sun god was Ra, the moon goddess was Isis, and the sun's name was Osiris. In Canaan, the sun god's name was Baal. The moon goddess's name was Ashtaroth. In Greece, the sun god was Zeus and Helios. The moon goddess was Selene and Hera, and the sun was called Apollo. In Rome, the sun god's name was Jupiter. The moon goddess was Diana. The sun was named Apollo as well. In Hindu, the sun god is Vishnu. The moon goddess is Chandra. And the sun is Krishna. So again, you see in each different civilization, you had these same three pagan deities being worshipped. Only thing that changed was his names, and the stories slightly differed. But again, it's the same three pagan deities pointing back to Satan. Now, the average person is smart enough to know that these stories of mythology are just folklore and not to be taken seriously. However, even though the stories are make believe, the worship of these deities is real, and the agents behind these deities is real, namely Satan and his demons. As stated before, Satan has deceived the whole world, which means that he has most of the people in the world worshiping him, and he's leading them to eternal fire. He accomplishes this by ritualistic practices and traditions that are handed down to us by our parents, grandparents, and great grandparents that we have been programmed to carry out without even questioning their origins. For instance, every major holiday that we observe is rooted in paganism, and the definition of paganism is a religion that worships many gods, especially a religion that existed before the main world religions. Nature beliefs were common in every variety of ancient paganism. So, from the definition, pagans worship nature, animals, the sun, moon, and stars, which can basically be summed up as worshiping the created things instead of the creator. You see, all of the holidays that we have been raised to observe are directly related to the pagan wheel of the year. And by observing these pagan holidays, we are actually worshiping pagan deities, just like the people did in antiquity. So, what is the pagan wheel of the year? It is a calendar of 8 seasonal festivals, or Sabbats, celebrated by many pagans, Wiccans, and other nature based spiritual traditions. These festivals mark the changing seasons and honor the cycles of the earth, the sun, and the agricultural life. The wheel represents the cyclical nature of time, life, death, and rebirth. The wheel of the year is divided into 2 solstices, 2 equinoxes, and 4 cross-quarter festivals. Together, they reflect the natural rhythms of light and darkness, growth and rest, and the changing energies of the earth. The solar festivals, winter solstice, which is called Yule, the shortest day, marking the rebirth of the sun. The spring equinox, called Ostara, day and night are equal, the earth awakens to life. The summer solstice, called Litha, the longest day, celebrating the peak of the sun's power. And the autumn equinox, called Mabon, day and night are equal once again, harvest season begins. The 2 cross-quarter festivals, these fall between the solstices and equinoxes, honoring significant turning points in the agricultural cycle. The wheel itself is often depicted as a circle or mandala, symbolizing the continuous cyclical flow of time and energy. It also reflects the balance of light and dark as the year is split in two. The light half, spring and summer, growth, abundance, and activity. The dark half, autumn and winter, reflection, rest, and renewal. Yule is a traditional midwinter festival celebrated around the winter solstice, the shortest day and longest night of the year, which typically falls between December 20th and 23rd in the Northern Hemisphere. Rooted in an ancient pagan and Germanic traditions, Yule marks the turning point when the days gradually begin to lengthen again, symbolizing the return of the sun and the rebirth of life. Yule celebrations date back to ancient European cultures like the Norse, Celtics, and Anglo-Saxons, with modern traditions inspired by these practices. Key elements of Yule include the Yule log. A large log or piece of wood is burned in the hearth to symbolize light overcoming darkness. Decorated with holly, ivy, or pine cones, the Yule log was sometimes kept burning for 12 days, and its ashes were believed to bring protection and good luck. That 12 days is what they call the 12 days of Christmas, by the way. 2. Evergreens. Plants like holly, ivy, mistletoe, and fir trees symbolize eternal life, resilience, and nature's enduring vitality during winter. Decorating homes with evergreen connects people to nature's cycles. This tradition inspired the modern Christmas tree. 3. Honoring the sun and the sun god. Ancient pagans celebrated the rebirth of the sun god, often referred to as Sol, Baldur, or the horn god on this day, representing life, warmth, and fertility. 4. Feasting and gift giving. Yule was a time of joy, reflection, and community. People feasted on hearty foods, exchanged small gifts, and honored abundance despite winter's scarcity. 5. Mistletoe. Mistletoe is considered sacred by the Druids, symbolized peace, love, and healing. Hanging it in homes encouraged goodwill and unity. 6. Candlelight and bonfires. Candles and fires were lit to honor the sun's return and ward off the darkness, symbolizing hope, warmth, and renewal. Now, this is just the warm and fuzzy definition of Yule, but in reality, before it was called Yule, it was called Saturnalia in Rome. And during that time, it was a time of revelry, debauchery, of sacrifice, you name it. The masses of the people who don't knowingly follow Satan are fooled into worshiping him by observing two holidays at the beginning of winter, which are Christmas and New Year's. Jeremiah 10:1-8 states, "Learn not the way of the heathen," then proceeds to describe how the heathen set up and decorate evergreen trees, which are what we call Christmas trees today. This is a pagan practice that originated in ancient Babylon and was performed to worship and honor the rebirth of the sun on the winter solstice, which is the shortest day of the year that occurs around December 22nd. During this time, the sun is still for 3 days before it starts its ascent on December 25th. This is why December 25th is considered the birthday of the sun. After the winter solstice, the hours of daylight gradually increase, which was symbolic of the sun god conquering the darkness of night. The date of December 25th was not the date that our Messiah was born, and the Christmas season has nothing to do with the true Messiah's birth. True believers in the Bible do not observe Christmas. Again, Jeremiah 10:1-8 states, "Learn not the way of the heathen, for the customs of the people are vain. For one cutteth a tree out of the forest. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not." So you can see this scripture clearly is describing a Christmas tree, and for us not to practice the way of the heathen by setting one up. For the sake of time, I'm not going to read the rest of the information on this slide, but please pause the video and read it at your leisure. New Year's is the worship of the Roman pagan god Janus. If you count 12 days starting on December 21st, which is the winter solstice, you would end on January 1st, which is the pagan New Year. However, this practice of observing the New Year 12 days after the winter solstice originated in ancient Babylon. Now, I know in another slide I had the winter solstice as December 22nd, but with the Gregorian calendar, the days are constantly shifting. So the winter solstice normally happens anywhere from December 20th to December 22nd. Now, the Bible clearly states that the new year begins in the month of Abib, which is the same month as the Passover when the 12 tribes were delivered from Egypt. The Hebrew calendar also shows the new year starting in Abib, which is also the beginning of the spring season. Exodus 12:1-2 states, "And Yahweh spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you." Then this verse proceeds to give instructions for the Passover. Exodus 13:3-4 states, "And Moses said unto the people, Remember this day in which you came out from Egypt, out of the house of bondage. For by strength of hand Yahweh brought you out from this place. There shall no leavened bread be eaten. This day came ye out in the month of Abib." Deuteronomy 16:1 states, "Observe the month of Abib, and keep the Passover, and Yahweh Elohaka, for in the month of Abib Yahweh Elohaka brought thee forth out of Egypt by night." So we see that all of these scriptures clearly state that the beginning of the year is in the month of Abib, and the month of Abib is the same time as Passover, which we know happened in the spring. The Bible also clearly states that on the first day of the year, the people kept the dedication of Yah's house, which in today's time would be to dedicate your body house/temple to Yahweh. Exodus 40, 1 through 2 and verse 17 states, And Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, On the first day of the first month shalt thou set up the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation. And it came to pass in the first month, in the second year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was reared up. Ezra chapter 6, verse 16 states, And the children of Israel, the priests and the Levites, and the rest of the children of the captivity, kept the dedication of this house of Elohim with joy. So we see from the scripture that the true New Year's Eve service is not in winter in January to honor a pagan god, but is on the first day of the first month in spring, which is to dedicate the temple to the Most High. And that today will be the temple of your body. The next festival on the pagan wheel of the year is Imbolc. This cross-quarter day follows midwinter, and it falls on the 1st of February and traditionally marks the first stirrings of spring. It aligns with the contemporary observance of Groundhog's Day. It is time for purification and spring cleaning in anticipation of the year's new life. In Rome, it was historically a shepherd's holiday, while the Celts associated it with the onset of Ewe's lactation prior to birthing the spring lambs. Candlemas and Imbolc, popularly called Groundhog's Day, the popular Punxsutawney Phil groundhog comes out of his burrow to divine the next few weeks of weather. If he sees his shadow, we will have 6 more weeks of bad weather until spring finally arrives. If he does not see his shadow, the next 7 weeks before spring will be good weather. Notice this pagan tradition features both the numbers 6 and 7, which when added equals 13. What most people do not realize is that the pagan view of Groundhog's Day represents the Earth Mother or Mother Nature, aka Semiramis or the Queen of Heaven. And the reason why this is because the groundhog comes out of the earth. And then they say that the Queen of Heaven is also Mother Earth. So the groundhog symbolizes Semiramis. Valentine's Day, aka Lupercalia, is a pagan festival that encourages love and physical lust. It is celebrated precisely 13 days after Imbolc, thus imprinting upon it the number 13, Satan's number of extreme rebellion. While most people view this day as the day to honor your wife or your lover, this celebration is steeped in paganism. Consider the camouflage occult gods in Valentine's Day. Cupid, the son of Venus, is really Tammuz, son of Semiramis. The Lupercalia was a day of extreme debauchery, revelry, and violence. It was one of the most decadent and satanic days of the year, where sexual immorality was rampant and sacrifices were made to appease the sun god and queen of heaven. These practices still take place today in high society, which was actually showcased in the movie Eyes Wide Shut, starring Tom Cruise. Now, Satan knows that most people are decent and wouldn't participate in this type of sadistic festival, so he promotes Valentine's Day as a way for you to come into agreement with this pagan tradition, and in doing so, you violate the commandments of the Most High and put yourself in danger of his judgment if you don't repent and turn from it. The next festival on the pagan wheel of the year is Ostara, which happens on the spring equinox. Ostara is the wicked and pagan festival that aligns with the spring equinox and honors the return of spring and the fertility of the earth. It is one of the 8 Sabbaths of the wheel of the year and is named after the goddess Ostara, also known as Istar or Eostre, or more modernly termed Easter, the goddess of spring, dawn, and fertility. The spring equinox occurs annually around March the 20th through the 23rd in the Northern Hemisphere. It is an astronomical event when the sun aligns directly above the Earth's equator, resulting in nearly equal day and night across the globe. Traditional Ostara Easter practices are decorating eggs. Eggs symbolize fertility and rebirth. Painting them in vibrant colors honors the awakening of life. This practice influenced the modern-day tradition of Easter egg decoration. Honoring nature, planting seeds, tending gardens, and celebrating the greening earth connect participants to nature's cycles. Rabbits and hares, seen as sacred animals of Eostre, they symbolize abundance, vitality, and fertility due to their prolific ability to reproduce. Balancing rituals, equinox ceremonies often involve balancing objects like eggs or meditations focused on finding harmony in life. Feasting, sharing meals with seasonal foods like leafy greens, eggs, honey, and seeds reflect the earth's renewal. Another notable food for the meal is Easter ham, symbolizing the boar that killed the sun god Tammuz. Easter is a shifting date using the common practices of astrology. It is celebrated on the first Sunday after the new moon after Ostara. This date also has nothing to do with the resurrection of our Messiah. Rather, this day in the pagan tradition celebrates the return of Semiramis into her reincarnated form of the spring goddess or moon goddess. Any event that centers around honoring pagan deities, especially in ancient times, included human sacrifice and the shedding of innocent blood. The spring equinox is a high holiday for witches and those who practice in the occult. Again, Easter has nothing to do with the resurrection of Yahusha, the only begotten Son of the Most High. It is strictly a festival that pagans observe to honor the Queen of Heaven in hopes of being blessed with the fertile harvest. Today, people still observe these pagan deities and practice satanic rituals to receive material gain. You should run from any institution that observes Easter and tries to equate it with the resurrection of our Messiah. Okay, the next pagan festival on the pagan wheel of the year is Beltane. The Beltane festival is an ancient Celtic celebration that marks the beginning of summer. Traditionally observed on April 19th into May 1st, it is one of the four major Gaelic seasonal festivals, along with Samhain, Imbolc, and Lughnasadh. The name Beltane derives from the Celtic word meaning bright fire or Bel's fire, referring to the Celtic sun god Belinus. Beltane celebrates the sexual forces of nature. On May Day, townspeople would elect a green man to deflower the Virgin May Queen. This tradition personified the sacred marriage of Baal and Ashtaroth, aka Nimrod and Semiramis. Another mating ritual involved folks dancing around the maypole, which represents the male phallus thrust into Mother Gaia, aka Mother Earth. Her sexual symbol is the garland, placed at the top of the maypole. The practice of dancing around the maypole goes all the way back to ancient Babylon and is the origin of stripper pole dancing, which is still popular in adult clubs today. The traditional practice of Beltane are lighting bonfires, symbolizing the sun's warmth and energy. These fires were a focal point of celebrations. In ancient times, these bonfires were used for human sacrifices to the pagan deities. Maypole dancing, aka stripper pole, is a central pole that is decorated with ribbons, flowers, and greenery, with dancers weaving patterns symbolizing unity and fertility. Decorating with flowers, homes and participants were adorned with flowers and greenery, especially hawthorn, symbolizing vitality and life. Hand fasting, a traditional marriage or union ceremony that often took place during Beltane, signifying partnership and commitment. Offerings to spirits, food, drink, and other offerings were left for nature spirits or deities to ensure blessings and goodwill. April 19th is the first day of the 13-day satanic ritual day relating to fire, the fire god Baal, or Molech/Nimrod, the sun god, also known as the Roman god Saturn/Satan/devil. This day is allegedly a major human sacrifice day, demanding fire sacrifice with an emphasis on children. This day is one of the most important human sacrifice days, and as such has had some very important historic events that have occurred on this day. This is a photo of the annual Beltane celebration that pagans observe. In the photo, you see the green man, who they believe is the male god of fertility, and every culture has their version of the green man. You also see that the green man has horns because he is also the horn god, as well as the sun god. Here you see the green man dancing with the May Queen, also known as Mother Earth/Mother Nature, which is just another name for the Mother Goddess. This celebration ends with a sexual ritual where the green man impregnates the Mother Goddess, which symbolizes the newness of life and the much anticipated summer harvest. Many of the modern day wedding traditions of the man taking the garland from the bride and throwing it to the single men, and the bride throwing her bouquet of flowers to the single women, originated with the pagan celebration of Beltane. This is just another example of how Satan has deceived the world and interwoven his pagan practices into society which violate the commandments of the Most High. This next photo is of the bonfire that is set during the Beltane celebration. The bonfire is supposed to denote the intensity and strength of the sun god, but they were mainly used for human sacrifice to the sun god and to the mother goddess. Now, we made mention on one of the previous slides that April 19th is the beginning of the 13-day Beltane fire celebration and has allegedly been one of the major human sacrifice days. This slide shows numerous catastrophic events that have taken place on or around April 19th. Do you think it's a coincidence that these events took place around the time of Beltane? Most people who are in their right mind would never willingly celebrate Beltane, and Satan knows this, which is why he instituted two holidays for the month of May that people observe, which brings them into agreement with the Beltane festival. Those two holidays are Mother's Day and Memorial Day. Mother's Day was originally the day that pagans worshiped the Mother Goddess / Mother Earth / Queen of Heaven. Satan has camouflaged the worship of these false deities by getting the people of the world to worship their mothers on this day instead, which is still idolatry. The scriptures state that we will be held accountable for every word we speak, and when we speak the words Happy Mother's Day on this pagan holiday and give your mother gifts, you are actually participating in Beltane and honoring the Mother Goddess. Also, Deuteronomy 18:11 states that we are not to participate in necromancy. And although Satan spends Memorial Day as this day to honor the fallen soldiers who have defended their country, this is really an event where those who practice occult worship celebrate their blood sacrifices and seek to commune with evil spirits. True believers in the scriptures should repent and stay clear of these holidays. The next festival on the pagan wheel of the year is Litha, also known as Midsummer, and it's a pagan festival that celebrates the summer solstice, the longest day and shortest night of the year. Litha is one of the 4 solar holidays and is considered the turning point at which the summer reaches its heights and the sun shines the longest, typically occurring around June the 20th through the 23rd in the northern hemisphere. Litha honors the power of the sun at its peak and the abundant energy of life and growth. The name Litha comes from Old English and was popularized in modern pagan and Wiccan traditions. Spiritual meaning of Litha. Litha is a celebration of light, warmth, and abundance. Spiritually, it represents the power of the sun. The sun is at its zenith, symbolizing strength, vitality, and success, life, and fertility. It is a time to honor the earth's fertility and the abundance of crops, animals, and plant life, balance, and transition. While the solstice marks the height of light, it also signals the turning point toward the darker half of the year, a reminder of life cycles, the divine union. In Wiccan traditions, Litha honors the goddess and god at the peak of their power, symbolizing the sacred balance of masculine and feminine energies. Traditional Litha practices. Number 1, bonfires and fire rituals. Fire symbolizes the sun's power, purification, and protection, and in ancient times, the bonfires were used to sacrifice people to the sun god in hopes of receiving an abundant harvest. Jumping over bonfires or passing through the fire was believed to bring luck, fertility, and prosperity. Number 2, honoring the sun. Watching the sunrise or sunset is a common way to connect with the energy of the solstice. Rituals often involve offering gratitude to the sun for its life-giving energy. These are pagan practices because there is no place in the Bible that tells us to honor or worship the sun. This next slide is just a couple of photos showing ancient sun worship practices and modern day sun worship practices. Again, I can't stress enough that we are not to worship any of the luminaries, and to do so will result in judgment. Well, there are those who may say that they don't participate in any sun worshiping practices, and my response to that would be, if you've ever celebrated Father's Day or Independence Day, then yes, you have actively practiced sun worship. Father's Day was originally called the Sky Father's Day and was the official day to worship the sun god on the summer solstice because this is the longest day of the year, symbolizing when the sun is at the peak of its powers. Every day after this, the days begin to get shorter, which pagans believe symbolizes that their particular sun god deity was dying and going to Hades. Again, Satan understands that most people would not outrightly worship the sky father slash sun god, so he instituted Father's Day instead. And just like Mother's Day, if you speak the words Happy Father's Day and buy your father gifts on this day, then you are guilty of celebrating this pagan festival. Also, Independence Day has nothing to do with America's freedom from British rule, because Britain still controls America. Many people don't know that the United States is a corporation and is owned by the elite, and you can actually look up the United States Articles of Incorporation. That's why America doesn't have any kings or queens, just presidents who are just administrators hired by a king to run this country. The prophet Daniel was a president for the Persian Empire appointed by the Persian king Darius. Read Daniel chapter 6, verses 1 through 3. The real independence that is celebrated on this day is Satan has a country that is fully Babylonian and does not adhere to the Torah, and his people are free from following the laws of the Most High. Again, stay away from these pagan holidays and don't participate in them. I'm skipping the festival of Lughnasadh for the sake of time, which is the first of the three Wiccan harvest festivals. The main thing to know about Lughnasadh is that it was a time to worship the god of the harvest, notably the Green Man, and make bonfires and sacrifices to him. The next festival on the pagan wheel of the year that we will briefly discuss is Mabon, which takes place on the autumn equinox. On this day and night are nearly equal, and it's a time that pagans thank the waning sun for the wealth bestowed upon them. I will caution you to be very careful on the solstices and the equinoxes, because these are the days that the Wiccans and pagans step up their occult practices, and the dark energy that they channel is at its peak. Mabon is also a time of rest after the labor of the harvest. You may have already guessed it. The holiday that the devil uses to get the people to honor and celebrate Mabon is Labor Day. But thankfully, our eyes have been opened to his devices, and we can begin to steer clear of his evil works. The next festival that we will discuss on the pagan wheel of the year is Samhain, which is basically the same as Halloween. For any true believer in the Bible, it's already understood that you should not participate in Samhain/Halloween, because these holidays worship the dead and is one of the highest days of channeled demonic energy being released into the world. The main thing I would like to point out about Samhain is that it's seen as a festival of darkness and death, which is balanced at the opposite point of the wheel by the festival of Beltane, which is celebrated as a festival of light and fertility. It occurs at the end of the harvest season and is seen as a time by pagans where the veil between the physical world and the spiritual realm is believed to be at its thinnest, which aids them in courting demonic energy. This day is dedicated to the horn god and the stag god. These two figures will be key as I wrap up this presentation about these pagan holidays. This slide shows more specific details about the horn god. He is known as the horned hunter, lord of death and resurrection, and the spirit of the wilderness, and the spirit of the animal kingdom. He is also known as the goat god Pan, the Egyptian god Amun, and one of his most famous names, Cernunnos, but we will cover that in more detail in a moment. He is often represented by a stag with antlers, or any horned animal, even a bull. On this next slide, I have an article about the pagan origins of Thanksgiving. You can visit the website if you want to read the whole article, but I'm only reading a portion of it. In school, we were taught that the Thanksgiving holiday started in the early 1600s, when the European pilgrims and the Native American Indians sat down after making a peace treaty over the land of America and celebrated with each other over a meal called Thanksgiving. For those of us who are conscious, we know this to be one of the biggest lies in history, and that the truth is the Europeans slaughtered the Native Americans and celebrated their victory with the meal called Thanksgiving. But what many of us don't know is that the celebration of Thanksgiving did not originate here in America. It came from ancient Rome. The celebration of Thanksgiving is one of the oldest celebrations in the world. What we know today as Thanksgiving was known to the ancients as a fall harvest festival. Since the reign of ancient Egypt, each culture of people celebrated a fall harvest festival where the community would gather together and eat the last harvest of their crops. and each of these festivals were dedicated to the worship of the god of that particular nation, honoring him/her for a great harvest. The Egyptian fall festival was centered around the worship of men. The Israelite fall festival, which is Sukkot, the biblical Feast of Tabernacles, was of course centered around the worship of YAH, the creator of the universe. The Babylonian fall festival was centered around the worship of Marduk. The Persian fall festival was centered around the worship of Mithras. The Chinese fall festival was centered around the worship of Chung Chui. The Greek fall festival was centered around the worship of Demeter, and the Romans fall festival was centered around the worship of Ceres. The next section that I'll be reading is separate from the previous article. Satanic origin of Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving takes place on the fourth Thursday of November every year, which is exactly 9 months after Lupercalia, aka Valentine's Day. Lupercalia was a violent, sexually charged, and bloody ancient Roman festival celebrated in mid-February. Many pregnancies took place due to the sexual exploits on this day, and those babies were born 9 months later in mid-November. The people would hold a ceremony to thank their pagan deity for the baby that was born, which they would later sacrifice to the sun god on the winter solstice. The sacrificing of the newborn babies was a way to appease the sun god in hopes to receive a bountiful harvest in the coming year. This is the true satanic origin of Thanksgiving. So you see that Thanksgiving is another pagan holiday that believers should not be observing. The next slide shows the pagan god Molech, which is just another name for Nimrod, Baal, Jupiter, the horn god, etc. Molech, also spelled Moloch, is a figure mentioned in the Bible associated with the worship practices of certain ancient Near Eastern cultures. Molech is most notably linked to child sacrifice, a practice explicitly condemned by Yahuwah. Key references in the Bible. 1. Prohibition of worship. Molech worship is strictly forbidden in the Bible. The Israelites were commanded not to participate in this practice associated with Molech. Leviticus 18:21 states, "Do not give any of your children to be sacrificed to Molech, for you must not profane the name of your Elohim. I am Yahuwah." Leviticus 20:2-5 is the passage that prescribes the death penalty for anyone who sacrifices their children to Molech, and warns that such practices would defile the nation. It says historical practices. Molech worship involved the sacrifice of children, possibly by fire, as part of a ritual meant to seek favor or appease the deity. Archaeological and historical evidence suggests that similar rituals were practiced in nearby cultures, such as the Phoenicians and the Ammonites. The practice of sacrificing children was so prevalent in antiquity that the Most High had to make strict laws to forbid it. Unfortunately, child sacrifice still happens today by Satanist groups, but the number one form of child sacrifice is abortion. I know that abortion is a hot topic and is not the focus of this video, so that discussion will be tabled for another day. But as far as the Thanksgiving holiday goes, the babies that were born during this time by way of the Lupercalia were sacrificed on the altar to Molech. And when you observe the Thanksgiving holiday, you are coming into agreement with this demonic spirit and the sacrificial rituals that take place. Okay, now I want to give you a little more detail about the horn god, because he is the main character in Satan's deception, and he goes by the name of Cernunnos, and I'll be reading a short article about him. The article is called Cernunnos, the antler god of power and blessing. Cernunnos is the antler god, part man and part stag. He is born on the darkest day of the year, winter solstice, and marries the goddess of spring, Beltane. About 6 months later, on summer solstice, he dies. In Celtic lore, he is often depicted sitting cross-legged, the position of a mediator or teacher, parentheses, illuminator. His actual name comes from the 1st century pillar of the boatman. Among pagans, he is considered the god of fertility, animals, and wealth in the underworld. Sometimes he carries a purse filled with coin for wealth. This connection to wealth and gold coins is found in the myth about Pluto, Hades, the god of the underworld, from which all wealth comes. Indeed, abundance comes from what is deep in the earth and deep in our own psyche. Now, this photo is a picture of Cernunnos with the burning stag god that we will get to in a minute. Cernunnos has large antlers because he is also known as the horn god, and he commands all of the animals in the forest. He is also known as the green man because he is the god of fertility. You see, all of these deities pretty much share the same story, and the only thing that changes is their name. Okay, on to the next slide. Who are the Nicolaitanes? In the book of Revelation, Yahusha gives the Apostle John a message for the called out assemblies and says that he hates the deeds and doctrines of the Nicolaitanes. Revelation 2:6, but this thou hast, that thou hatest the deeds of the Nicolaitanes, which I also hate. Revelation 2:15, so hast thou also them that hold the doctrine of the Nicolaitanes, which thing I hate? Nicolaitanes were followers of Nicholas. The name Nicholas means conqueror of people, being based on the Greek words nikos, meaning conqueror or destroyer, and laos, meaning people. Nicholas is the Greek variation of the name Nimrod, which means we will rebel. Saturn is another variation of the name Nimrod. Before being called Christmas, December 25th was called Saturnalia, the birthday of Saturn or the sun god. Given the connection between Nimrod and Nicholas, it is no coincidence that Santa Claus or Saint Nicholas is a prominent figure at this time, similar to the horn god Cernunnos, who is said to be reborn on the winter solstice. Nimrod, Nicholas, Santa Claus, Saint Nicholas, and Cernunnos are all the same deity, just called by different names, and are all different personifications of Satan. The occult likes to hide in plain sight because the word Santa is the same as the word Satan if you just reposition the letter N in Santa to the N. Saturnalia upheld the same principles as the Nicolaitanes and was itself a time of unrestrained indulgence, with drunkenness, revelry, and riotous behavior, where even slaves obtained temporary freedom to join, just like the Lupercalia. Okay, moving on to the next slide, the burning stag. The burning of the stag is part of Hogmanay celebrations in Edinburgh, Scotland, and is featured in a torchlight procession. The stag is a symbol of nobility and the upper classes, and is often featured in historical symbols and stately homes. The stag has been a symbol in many cultures, including the Celtics. The stag was associated with the god Cernunnos, the god of the forest and wild animals. The stag's annual shedding and regrowth of antlers symbolize transformation and renewal. The Welsh. The stag was said to be a messenger between the other world and this world, and a symbol of spiritual journeying. That's very important, spiritual journeying. Native American. The deer was a totem of sensitivity, gentleness, and intuition, and was also associated with fertility. So here we see a photo of the burning stag, which caused the stag to glow. What Christmas character do you think this represents? You guessed it, Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, who had a very shiny nose. Once again, Satan has many tricks up his sleeve. He knows that most people won't willingly worship a pagan deity, especially one called the horn god or the stag god. But if he presents it in a nice little nursery school story with a jolly old fat man with a long white beard and a cute little reindeer with a shiny red nose, then the people will eat it up. So what you see is that Santa Claus and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer are just the warm and fuzzy versions of Cernunnos and the stag god. This is the perfect example of how Satan masquerades as an angel of light to get you to receive his false doctrines and pagan practices. Now, I hope it's clear that Santa Claus is really a pagan deity that should not be brought into your home. As I previously stated, he is just another personification of Satan, the horn god, and another deity who I haven't really mentioned, Bacchus, also known as Dionysus, also known as the goat god Pan. Bacchus was the god of revelry, lust, and wine, and he promoted sexual immorality, drunkenness, and violence. They're not even hiding who Santa Claus is anymore, which you can see in movies like Office Christmas Party, which was a movie exhibiting a lot of bacchanalian rites, as the Romans practiced on Saturnalia. and the Lupercalia. Also, the movie Violent Night portrays Santa Claus as a mercenary because you have to remember, Santa Claus is also a representation of Nimrod, which is shown on this slide. And Nimrod was a mighty hunter and a mighty warrior, also known as the Lord of Death. Okay, we are coming to the end, so let me start to wrap this up. What is an altar? In the Bible, an altar is a raised structure used for religious rituals, particularly for sacrifices and offerings to the Most High, or even to demonic spirits. Altars are significant in biblical worship and serve as places where people interact with Yahuwah or other spiritual entities, express devotion, and seek forgiveness or blessings. The word altar comes from the Latin words altarium, which means high, and adolere, which means to ritually burn or sacrifice. Altars were primarily used for offering animal sacrifices, grain offerings, and incense to Yahuwah. These sacrifices symbolized atonement, thanksgiving, or worship. Altars served as places for prayer and worship, often symbolizing Yahuwah's presence among his people. That's key, his presence. What most people don't realize is that an altar is a portal or gateway between the physical world and the spiritual world. When you set up an altar and offer a sacrifice on it by blood or by fire, this opens a portal for the spirit you are petitioning to come through to visit you. There are numerous accounts in the Bible where men built altars, and the Most High spoke to them and cut a covenant, or sent an angel to give them a message or to bless them. You see, the physical world was created for man to rule, and he was given full dominion of the earth. Therefore, angels don't even have lawful access on earth to interfere with the lives of men. The only way that angels or even demons can have access to your life is if you invite them in, mainly by way of an altar or by coming into agreement with them. The Messiah even stated in Revelation 3, verse 20, that he stands at the door of your heart and knocks, and he will only come in if you open the door, meaning you must invite him in. The Most High has put strict rules in place regarding the interactions between the spiritual world and the physical world that he and his son won't even violate. Therefore, you must be very cautious about the things you look at, the things you say, and the things you interact with, because you could be inviting demonic spirits into your life and making agreements with them unknowingly. So let me reiterate. An altar is a place where sacrifices are made by the sprinkling of blood or consuming the sacrifice with fire. When you erect an altar, whether knowingly or unknowingly, to any spirit, you come into agreement with that spirit and give them lawful access to your life. Have you ever asked yourself, what is the Yuletide log that must be burned on Christmas, and why does Santa Claus have to come down your chimney? Well, we just explained that Santa Claus is a personification of Satan, and the Yule log is a sacrifice that is burned in your chimney, and symbolically, Satan now has access to enter your home by way of your chimney/altar and deliver his presence, aka presents, among you and your family. Similarly, whenever people observe a holiday, especially in the warmer times of the year, what do they cook on? You guessed it, a barbecue grill, which is used to cook their food, or better yet, their sacrifice over open fire in celebration to the pagan deity associated with that holiday. Now, there is nothing wrong with having a cookout and barbecuing your food over an open fire. As a matter of fact, that is the best way to cook your food. But the problem is when you have a cookout and barbecue on a pagan holiday, you have now erected an altar and come into agreement with that demonic spirit behind that particular holiday, which the Most High forbids. Read Isaiah chapter 44, verses 1 through 20. Now I want to quickly switch gears and show you this sun simulator that I put together so that you can see how the sun transitions throughout the year and why the pagans worship it. Okay, this is the sun simulator that I put together. If you go to timeanddate.com and choose sun calculator, then you can choose the region that you want to investigate. And from there, you can choose the month and then the day. And then you can look at each day of that month and see how long the daylight hours were. So of course I'm in the United States of America on the East Coast. So I chose March 20th to start it off because March 20th is the spring equinox, and that's the beginning of the year. This is the month of Abib according to the Hebrew calendar. Again, the new year does not begin in winter. That's a pagan holiday. That's a pagan festival. The new year begins in spring, newness of life, and again, the equinox, and everything is in balance. That's how the Most High starts the year. So we go to the next month, April. You see April 20th, and you see that the daylight hours have increased to 13 and a half hours per day, right? So again, the duration of the sun increases, and this is again how they began to worship the sun god. They would worship the sun and track the sun. So I'm gonna show you something. You go to the third month. Now it has increased to 14 and a half hours. Okay, and then this is the summer solstice. So this is the longest day of the year. This is when the sun is at its peak. It's at its height. It's at its strongest point, right? So you got roughly 15 hours of day light, and probably it's about 9 hours of a night. So again, this is when they say that the sun god has defeated the darkness. But now the issue is every day after this, the days start to get shorter again. So what they believe is that okay, after the summer solstice, the sun god he goes to hell, and then the mother goddess has to come forth, and she rules from the summer solstice to the winter solstice. All right. So we'll keep going, and now you'll see in the following month, July 21st, the daylight hours start to decrease. Okay, because again, they believe in this, so they'll track this, and they say, okay, the sun god has gone to Hades. So now we go to August 21st. It's down to 13 and a half hours. Now we hit the autumn equinox, and it's at balance again. And again, at these equinoxes and at these solstices, different rituals are going on, sacrifices are going on. So you definitely need to be aware during these times what's going on in the world and what's going on around you. If you keep going, your days keep getting shorter, shorter. This is November 21st, approximately 10 hours a day. Now we get to the winter solstice. Now this is the shortest day of the year, right? So this is when they say, okay, this is the shortest day. So now every day after this, the days start getting longer again. So that's why they believe that this is the rebirth of the sun. So on the winter solstice, it's the shortest day. About 3 days after that, the sun is repositioning itself, and like on the third day, you can begin to see the sun start to ascend, and that's what they say the sun is birthed on December 25th. Again, these are all pagan rituals, pagan beliefs that we are not to follow. All right, so keep going, and we see that they believe that the sun god is increasing in intensity. They're going to continue to pray to him for a bountiful harvest. All right. So again, you see the sun is increasing. So I'm just going to speed it up just so you can see it. So again, this is the demonstration of the sun, the phases of the sun. Again, people worship the sun, something that we should not do. They worship the moon. Again, the Most High told us, instructed us not to do this. But I just wanted you to get this visual aid so you can see what's going on. So again, now you can see how these holidays fit into this whole worshiping of the sun. Now this is just another diagram of the pagan wheel of the year, where I added all of the major holidays so you can see how they fall in line with the pagan seasonal festivals. As I've stated numerous times in this video, Satan is crafty, and he knows that most people won't worship him or his demons outrightly. So he tricks us into worshiping them by presenting us with some type of innocent festival to observe that we have no idea is linked to demonic worship. Again, Satan has just counterfeited stories from the Bible and taking biblical characters and deified them to get people to worship idols, which is ultimately the worship of him. Now, some people worship Satan knowingly, but many people worship him unknowingly. When I say unknowingly, most people don't know that the Most High gave us holy days to observe, which are outlined in Leviticus 23. But Satan, like Cleo McDowell, has counterfeited the Most High's holy days and given us holidays to observe. For instance, once you begin to study the Most High's holidays and observe them, you will learn the exact days that the Messiah was born and the exact day he gave his life, and you will also learn how to properly honor his birth and death, burial, and resurrection. Once your eyes have been opened and you start to study the scriptures, you will learn that the holidays that you observe fall right in line with the pagan word of the year, as was shown in this video, and must be avoided at all costs. Now, some may argue that I am taking this a bit too seriously and that the Most High is not going to send people to hell because they observe holidays. I mean, come on. All we're doing is just spending time with family and friends and enjoying each other's company. It's just tradition and it's not hurting anyone. Well, to answer that question, I will quote Mark chapter 7, verses 7 through 9, where it states, "Howbeit, in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. For laying aside the commandment of YAH, ye hold the tradition of men, as the washing of pots and cups, and many other such things you do. And he said unto them, Full well, you reject the commandments of YAH, that you may keep your own tradition." Also in Colossians chapter 2, verses 6 through 9, it states, "As ye have therefore received Hamashiach Yahusha, our Adonai, so walk ye in him, rooted and built up, established in the faith as you have been taught, abounding therein with thanksgiving. Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Hamashiach. For in him dwelleth all the fullness of Elohim bodily." Some may further argue, well, I've been celebrating these holidays all my life, and nothing has happened to me, and I've been blessed, so why stop now? Yes, that may be true, but Acts 17:29 through 31 states, "For as much then as we are the offspring of Yahweh, we ought not to think that Yah is like unto gold, or silver, or stone, graven by art and man's device. And the times of this ignorance Yahweh winked at, but now commands all men everywhere to repent, because he hath appointed a day in the which he will judge the world in righteousness by that man whom he hath ordained, whereof he hath given assurance to all men, and that he hath raised him from the dead." So, what is Yahweh saying in this scripture? Yes, he turned a blind eye to your idolatry because you worship those idols in ignorance, meaning you didn't know any better. So he extended grace to you, but now we are living in the age of the awakening, and he is allowing his truth to come forward. Once you hear the truth and continue to practice idolatry, then you can no longer plead ignorant, and judgment will soon be upon you. In closing, do Christians really believe in the Bible? Well, like I said earlier, the one way you can prove that you truly believe in something is you have to live it and walk it out in your daily life. So, the question is, are Christians keeping Yah's word, or are they following the world? And if one is adhering to pagan traditions, aka holidays, then you can't be keeping Yah's word, because his word strictly forbade such practices. See, I was raised as a Christian all my life, but when I was exposed to the truth, I repented of my pagan practices and began to adhere to the truth of the scriptures. Now I know that this is a hard teaching for some, but I pray that the words in this video fall on fertile ground and leads you to seek the truth for yourself. This video is just the tip of the iceberg, and we haven't even scratched the surface yet. If you want to learn more and allow the truth to set you free, like it did for me, then please stay tuned for part 2. He who has an ear to hear, let him hear.